Sign it, Elena. You came into this family with nothing.
And if I refuse?
Wedding ends tonight.
Elena Brooks held Adrian Sterling's gaze for 3 silent seconds before taking the silver pen from his hand. Music drifted through the ballroom of the Sterling Grand Hotel in Manhattan, where nearly 400 guests had gathered for what was supposed to be a joyful pre-wedding gala. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Champagne flowed from glass towers. A string quartet played beside the marble staircase, and some of the wealthiest people in New York watched Elena place the pen against the final page of a prenuptial agreement. She looked breathtaking in a fitted sapphire evening gown. Her light brown skin glowed beneath the chandeliers, while her black hair fell in smooth waves over one shoulder. Yet it wasn't her beauty that silenced the room. It was her composure. Across the table stood Adrian Sterling, the 34-year-old CEO of Sterling Global Holdings. Tall, handsome, and dressed in a custom black tuxedo, Adrian wore confidence like a crown. He had inherited his position 3 years earlier and behaved as though inheriting power meant he had earned it. His attorney, Martin Hale, placed one finger beside the signature line. "Initial every page and sign at the bottom," Martin instructed. Elena slowly turned through the document. The prenup was more than 80 pages long. It denied her access to Sterling properties, company shares, family trusts, investment accounts, and even the penthouse where Adrian expected her to live after their wedding. If they divorced, Elena would leave with only what she had brought into the marriage. Adrian, however, would retain everything, including any gifts, investments, or business interests acquired while they were married. It was not an agreement between partners. It was a public declaration that Elena was disposable. "Adrian, this could have been handled privately," his grandfather said from the head table. 82-year-old Theodore Sterling sat quietly in his wheelchair. His silver hair was neatly combed, and although illness had weakened his body, his gray eyes remained sharp. Adrian smiled without looking at him. "I have nothing to hide, grandfather. Everyone should understand that Elena is marrying me, not my bank accounts." Whispers spread through the ballroom. Elena's best friend, Jasmine, stepped forward. "Elena, you don't have to accept this." Adrian's mother, Victoria Sterling, lifted her champagne glass and smirked. If she truly loves him, signing shouldn't be a problem. Elena looked around the room. Many guests avoided her eyes. Others held their phones discreetly, recording her humiliation for gossip pages. Then she looked at Theodore. The old man wasn't watching the document. He was watching her. Elena signed her name. Adrian's smile widened. Excellent decision. He lifted the signed agreement and displayed it as though he had just completed a corporate takeover. For Adrian, love was another negotiation, and he believed he had won. If you have ever watched someone mistake another person's kindness for weakness, stay with this story, because Adrian Sterling was only 10 minutes away from discovering that dignity can be more powerful than inherited wealth. Elena first met Adrian 18 months earlier at a community redevelopment meeting in Brooklyn. She worked as an urban planning consultant for a nonprofit organization that restored neglected neighborhoods. Adrian attended because Sterling Global wanted tax approval for a luxury development. At first, he appeared charming and ambitious. He admired Elena's intelligence and claimed that she made him see the city differently. But after their engagement, his admiration slowly changed into condescension. He laughed when Elena suggested converting an abandoned Sterling warehouse into affordable housing. "Sterling properties generate profit," he told her. "We're not running a charity." Elena reminded him that his grandfather had built the company by providing affordable construction loans to working families. Adrian rolled his eyes. "That was when my grandfather was laying bricks with his own hands. This is a global corporation now." What Adrian never realized was that Theodore had overheard that conversation from the library. Theodore had spent months quietly observing the couple. He watched Elena learn the names of the household staff. He saw her help his longtime nurse carry medical supplies without being asked. When one of Sterling Global's retired employees lost his home in a fire, Elena organized temporary housing and refused public credit. She also spent Sunday afternoons with Theodore, listening to stories about the early days of the company. Theodore told her how he had borrowed $500 to purchase his first truck. He described working through freezing winters, sharing meals with his employees, and nearly losing the business twice. Sterling Global wasn't built by one man, Theodore once said. It was built by thousands of people who trusted one another. Elena remembered every word. Adrian remembered only the current share price. While Elena discussed scholarships and community investments with Theodore, Adrian spent millions renovating his yacht. He charged private jets, designer watches, and luxury vacations to company accounts. He dismissed senior employees who questioned him and replaced them with friends who praised every reckless decision. Theodore warned him repeatedly. A leader who refuses correction eventually surrounds himself with people who will applaud his destruction. Adrian called him old-fashioned. Now, standing in the hotel ballroom, Theodore watched Adrian use the Sterling name to humiliate the woman he claimed to love. The old man placed a trembling hand over his chest. Elena noticed immediately. "Mr. Sterling?" Theodore's breathing became shallow. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the floor. Elena rushed across the ballroom before anyone else moved. "Call an ambulance!" she shouted. Adrian remained beside the prenup, frozen more by embarrassment than fear. The music stopped. Guests moved back as Elena knelt beside Theodore and supported his head. She loosened his collar and spoke calmly while the hotel's medical team arrived. "You're not alone," she whispered. "Stay with me." Theodore looked into her eyes and managed one faint smile. Then he lost consciousness. He was transported to the hospital, but despite the doctor's efforts, Theodore Sterling passed away 7 minutes after arriving. The pre-wedding celebration ended beneath the cold flash of emergency lights. The wedding was postponed, yet even before his grandfather was buried, Adrian began discussing control of Theodore's voting shares. 3 days after the funeral, the Sterling family assembled inside Theodore's private library for the reading of his will. Rain struck the tall windows. Shelves filled with leather-bound books surrounded a long oak table. Theodore's empty chair remained near the fireplace, making the room feel painfully incomplete. Adrian sat at the head of the table. Victoria sat beside him in a black designer dress, already making plans for Theodore's estates in Connecticut and Florida. Elena took a seat near the end. Adrian leaned toward her. "You don't need to stay. The will concerns blood relatives." Elena was personally requested, Martin Hale replied as he entered with 2 members of Sterling Global's legal team. Adrian frowned. "Requested by whom?" "Your grandfather." Martin placed a sealed envelope and several folders on the table. As you know, Theodore Sterling controlled 61% of Sterling Global Holdings through the Sterling Legacy Trust. The trust includes company shares, real estate, investment portfolios, intellectual property, and liquid assets currently valued at approximately $11.8 billion. Victoria inhaled with satisfaction. Adrian straightened his jacket. "Let's proceed." Martin opened the will. Theodore's recorded voice suddenly filled the room. Adrian turned toward a screen above the fireplace. Theodore appeared seated behind his old desk, wearing a navy suit. His face looked tired, but his voice was firm. "If you are watching this, then my time has ended. I hope my family will remember that wealth is a responsibility before it is a privilege." Adrian shifted impatiently. Theodore continued. "My grandson Adrian was given every advantage: education, opportunity, authority, and my trust. Unfortunately, privilege without humility can turn opportunity into entitlement." Adrian's jaw tightened. Victoria whispered, "This is inappropriate." Martin motioned for her to remain silent. Theodore explained that the Sterling Legacy Trust contained a moral fitness clause created decades earlier. Any primary heir who demonstrated financial recklessness, dishonesty, cruelty toward a spouse, or disregard for the company's founding principles could be disqualified. Adrian stood. That clause was ceremonial. It has never been enforced. Martin opened another folder. "It became enforceable when you signed the updated corporate governance agreement 2 years ago." "I signed hundreds of documents." "Yes," Martin replied, without reading many of them. Theodore's recording continued. 10 months ago, I commissioned an independent review of Adrian's leadership. Investigators documented the misuse of company funds, retaliation against employees, manipulation of internal reports, and repeated violations of our ethical charter. Documents appeared on the screen: private flights billed as business travel, payments made to Adrian's friends, and financial projections altered to hide failing investments. Adrian's face lost its color. These reports are exaggerated. They were verified by 3 independent firms, Martin said. Then Theodore addressed the evening of the gala. I hoped my grandson would approach marriage as a partnership. Instead, he commissioned a one-sided agreement designed to strip his future wife of dignity and security. He then forced her to sign it publicly. Elena stared at the screen. She had never known Theodore was aware of every detail. The prenup activated the final review, Martin explained. Theodore received a copy before the gala. Theodore leaned closer to the camera. Adrian, you saw Elena's limited financial resources and decided that made her less valuable. But money reveals character more often than it creates it. She had less than you, yet consistently gave more. Adrian looked toward Elena. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. Under Article 14 of the Sterling Legacy Trust, Theodore announced, Adrian Sterling is disqualified from inheriting or controlling the trust. Victoria shot to her feet. You cannot be serious, Martin continued reading. The entire controlling interest of Sterling Global Holdings, along with all assets held by the trust, shall pass to the individual I have selected as successor trustee and chief executive authority. Adrian gripped the edge of the table. Who? Theodore's image softened into a proud smile. Elena Grace Brooks. Silence swallowed the room. Even the rain seemed to disappear. Elena stopped breathing for a moment. Adrian stared at her as though she had transformed before his eyes. That's impossible, he whispered. Martin slid a folder toward Elena. Ms. Brooks, upon accepting the appointment, you will become controlling trustee of the Sterling Legacy Trust and executive chairwoman of Sterling Global Holdings. You will have authority to appoint or remove the chief executive officer. Adrian laughed, but the sound was strained.
Disgrace!
She isn't qualified. She runs neighborhood projects. She holds master's degrees in urban planning and business administration, Martin replied. She also spent the last 8 months reviewing Sterling Global's sustainability operations at Theodore's request. Adrian turned to Elena. You knew about this? I knew your grandfather asked for my opinion, Elena answered. I never knew he intended to leave me anything. Victoria pointed at her. She manipulated him. Martin placed a handwritten letter on the table. Theodore anticipated that accusation. His medical team confirmed he was mentally competent when every document was signed. The trust was also reviewed by 6 attorneys and approved by the independent board. Elena opened Theodore's letter. My dear Elena, it began, I am not giving you this responsibility because you are perfect. I am giving it to you because you listen before you lead and because you understand that a legacy survives only when it serves people beyond the person whose name is on the building. Tears filled her eyes. The letter ended with one final sentence. Kindness is not the absence of strength. It is strength disciplined by compassion. Elena pressed the letter against her heart. Adrian walked around the table. Elena, whatever happened between us, we can manage the company together. She looked at the man who had humiliated her in front of hundreds of people less than a week earlier. You told me I came into your family with nothing. I was protecting the company. No, Elena replied calmly. You were protecting your ego. Martin cleared his throat. There is another relevant matter. The prenuptial agreement was legally executed before witnesses. It clearly states that neither spouse may claim ownership or control over assets belonging solely to the other. Adrian looked at the signed document on the table. The weapon he had created to protect himself now stood like a wall between him and nearly $12 billion. The trust belongs exclusively to Elena, Martin continued. Should the marriage proceed, you will have no marital claim to it. Adrian sank into his chair. 10 minutes earlier, in his mind, Elena had been a penniless woman fortunate enough to marry him. Now, she was his controlling shareholder. Elena accepted Theodore's appointment on one condition. The board would perform a full financial audit and protect employees from retaliation during the transition. Her first executive order froze Adrian's company-funded luxury accounts, private aircraft access, yacht expenses, and discretionary budget. Her second order suspended him as CEO pending the audit. Her third established a $500 million community investment fund to create affordable homes, scholarships, employee healthcare support, and small business loans. Within 48 hours, Sterling Global's board unanimously confirmed Elena as executive chairwoman and interim CEO. When Elena entered the company's Manhattan headquarters for her first board meeting, no one saw the quiet woman Adrian had mocked at the gala. They saw a formidable leader in a tailored white suit, carrying Theodore's handwritten letter inside her portfolio. She did not demand respect by shouting. She commanded it by arriving prepared. She questioned inflated budgets, challenged weak projections, and listened carefully to department heads Adrian had ignored. She rehired 2 experienced executives he had fired for opposing him and appointed the company's first chief ethics officer. Sterling Global's employees soon discovered that Elena's compassion came with high standards. She was generous with second chances but ruthless about dishonesty. Leadership is not about making people fear your power, she told the board. It is about making them trust what you will do with it. If Elena's rise proves that people should never be judged by their bank balance or background, take a moment to like this story and share it with someone who needs to remember that quiet people are not powerless. Adrian's life changed almost overnight. Without access to the company's accounts, he was forced to sell 2 sports cars to cover personal debts. His friends stopped answering his calls when he could no longer fund their expensive parties. The penthouse belonged to the trust, and Elena reassigned it as housing for visiting executives. Adrian moved into a modest apartment he had purchased years earlier and forgotten about. One evening, he appeared outside Elena's office. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and the arrogance that once sharpened his features had been replaced by exhaustion. "I need to speak with you." Elena dismissed her assistant and allowed him inside. Adrian placed a financial statement on her desk. "My personal accounts are nearly empty. I know. I'm still Theodore Sterling's grandson, and I was still your fiancé when you humiliated me." He lowered his eyes. For once, Adrian had no clever response. "I made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary," Elena said. "What you did was a choice. You wanted everyone to see that you controlled me. I was afraid you would take what belonged to my family." Elena stood and walked toward the window. Manhattan stretched below them, its buildings glittering against the night. "Your grandfather understood something you never did. A family legacy doesn't belong to the person whose surname appears on it. It belongs to every person who sacrificed to build it, and everyone depending on its future." Adrian swallowed. "Are you going to leave me with nothing?" She turned toward him. "I will give you what your grandfather gave himself when he started, an opportunity." Elena offered him a junior role in the company's community development division. He would receive a normal salary, report to an experienced director, travel commercially, and undergo regular performance reviews. Adrian stared at the contract. "You expect me to work beneath people who used to report to me? I expect you to learn from people you once refused to respect. And if I say no, then you walk away with whatever remains in your personal accounts, exactly as the prenup requires." He looked at the agreement for a long time before signing. Elena did not marry him the following month. She postponed the wedding indefinitely and returned his ring. She told him forgiveness might be possible, but reconciliation would require genuine change, not desperation disguised as remorse. Over the next year, Sterling Global became more profitable than it had been under Adrian's leadership. Elena sold the wasteful yacht, redirected executive bonuses into employee development, and transformed the abandoned Brooklyn warehouse into a mixed-income residential complex. Above its entrance, she placed a simple inscription inspired by Theodore. "True wealth is measured by the lives made better through its existence." Adrian spent that year visiting construction sites, meeting families waiting for affordable homes, and listening to employees who had once been invisible to him. He struggled at first. He complained about commercial flights and hated asking permission for expenses. But life slowly taught him what privilege had hidden. Respect could not be inherited. Trust could not be purchased. And love could not survive where one person needed the other to feel small. On the first anniversary of Theodore's death, Elena visited his grave. She placed white roses beside the headstone and thanked him for believing in her. A few minutes later, Adrian arrived carrying an old photograph of Theodore standing beside his first truck. "I found this in storage," he said. "I thought it belonged here." Elena watched him place the photograph beside the flowers. "I finally understand why he chose you," Adrian admitted. Elena looked toward the sunrise beyond the cemetery trees. "He didn't choose me to punish you. He chose me to protect what you had forgotten." Adrian nodded slowly. That was the hardest truth he had ever accepted. Elena had entered the Sterling family without riches, status, or a powerful last name. Yet she possessed the one treasure Theodore valued above everything else: character. Adrian had inherited a fortune, but behaved as though that fortune made him superior. In the end, the document intended to prove Elena had no power protected her when power finally became hers. Because true wealth is not found in the size of an inheritance. It is found in the wisdom to use opportunity well, the courage to treat people with dignity, and the kindness to build doors for others after someone opens one for you. Never underestimate a person because they are quiet, humble, or starting with less. Seeds make no noise while growing, but given time, they can break through concrete. And if this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who believes success is about more than money. Let them know that arrogance may inherit a throne, but only character can build a dynasty.